Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. I hope you're doing well and that you guys are staying safe, washing your hands, washing your penis, whatever you need to do to protect yourself and get a little sun. My name is Brian. I'm here with Allison, and this is HBR Debate. I know that there's normally a spiel, but I don't really remember it. Maybe we haven't nailed one down yet. I don't know. There is one.
Just say the name of
there
the.
is one.
Just say the name of the. Just say the name of the show.
This is HBR Debate number 16. I believe we haven't done a whole ton of these. No, number 19. I apologize. War of the Witches. Rose McGowan versus Alyssa Milano on #MeToo. So,
spicy. War of the Witches.
Yeah, War of the Witches. I say that because, well, I guess a little bit of backstory. So, Alyssa Milano and Rose McGowan are both actresses, maybe former actresses. I'm not sure that they're still working. That used to be on a TV show in the 90s called Charmed, which is pictured here. And they have been on that show. I didn't know this. This is a funny little fun fact about the show Charmed, because I never watched it, but it's the longest running female-led show in history. It ran for 8 years. And it was, I guess, a very kind of girl power show. Girl power was a big thing in the 90s, if you guys may or may not remember. And so in more recent history, Rose McGowan, who is pictured on the far right there, she's on the far right of the image, and Alyssa Milano in the center, they were both a part of the Me Too movement. And Alyssa Milano was a very big advocate on Me Too on Twitter. She was, I believe that she was heavily involved in a political sense. So like when Brett Kavanaugh was up for a nomination to the Supreme Court, Alyssa Milano made a big stink out of it. This is the tweet she made where she says she stands in solidarity with Christine Blasey Ford, #MeToo. She wanted to postpone the vote. She was basically pushing for a believe all women kind of narrative. And even her Twitter is basically like her space for activism. As you can see, it's like a drawing of herself holding a little megaphone because her voice is so important. And she also dressed up for #MeToo. Again, never Kavanaugh, never, I think that says Gilead, which is the fictional world from Handmaid's Tale, and she's dressed up like a handmaid. I mean, kind of. It looks a little slapped together, but this was what she was about back in 2018 when this was going on. Gilead?
Yeah, yeah, Gilead. No, I know. Yeah, it's the fictional tale, and I've heard that feminists really like the story because in Gilead, all women are oppressed equally. So they're all equal in oppression, except for the ones that are sent to pick up toxic sludge because they don't have any fertility. But I guess that, being treated like a man makes you a man or something. I don't know. Yeah. Okay, continue, Brian.
So anyway, a little bit of backstory. So yeah, Alyssa Milano was, against Kavanaugh getting the nomination. She was a superior, big Me Too supporter. She helped it go viral. She basically was all about the canceling and stuff. She even called, I think, a sex strike to prevent people from getting into office that she thought were sexual abusers, or maybe she just didn't like them politically. Who knows? But that's the Alyssa Milano. A little bit about her involvement with Me Too. Okay,
it's the Alyssa Milano of yesterday. I'm not even going to attempt her last name.
Yeah, Milano.
The Alyssa of yesterday.
It's like Milano. Those cookies. You ever had those shortbread cookies, the Milano cookies? Allison?
No.
Oh, they were, I haven't had them in years, but they're so good. They're little oval-shaped cookies, and you could dip them in your coffee. Milano cookies. Yeah, this Italian. She's Italian.
I couldn't possibly have them now either. It sounds like they probably have butter, eggs, and milk. Butter, milk, and wheat.
Oh, they probably have all kinds of stuff in them that you can't have for sure.
The trifecta of death for me. Okay.
Yeah. So on the other side, I'm going to go back to this Charmed image again. We have on the right there, Rose McGowan. Now, Rose McGowan is another actress. She started off as a model. She was doing little indie films, stuff like that. But she got very involved with #MeToo. She was one of the people who kind of was the first to speak out about Harvey Weinstein. I want to say it started happening in 2016, but it was either there or maybe like a year before or a year after. I'm not really sure when like Me Too was really big, but she was one of the main voices of the Me Too movement. And at this point, Rose McGowan's, she doesn't look anything like this. She was basically like, not doing acting anymore. She was making all these news appearances. She even was on a Big Think video, which I think you and Mike responded to. Allison, do you remember that? It was like a Big Think response video to Rose McGowan. She was like ranting about how America is a cult and, about her abuse and believe women and all of this other stuff. And how boys are, it's a cult because boys are conditioned to treat women like objects and,
It's all a blur.
Yeah, it's all,
a blur. It's got my favorite false accusation against men, that objectification is a thing, something that people with mental illnesses, some people with mental illnesses legitimately suffer from, which is a debilitating it's debilitating in terms of your social abilities. And they say that men just spontaneously develop it as a result of looking at sexy women. They spontaneously develop a debilitating mental illness. It's like saying men spontaneously develop epilepsy whenever they look at attractive women. But, you don't have to prove these kinds of outrageous, outlandish statements when you're a feminist. You get infinite freebies to assert that reality is this way when what you're asserting is so absurd. I can't even believe that we need to call it out. But go ahead, Brian.
Okay.
Rant. Sorry, guys.
No, it's okay. So yeah, but you're right. Rose McGowan's position and Alyssa Milano. So they're both feminists, and they both feel very strongly about the Me Too movement, and they're exercising their influence in different ways. And this is the thing that got me really, for some reason, this was like a mind worm when I saw what happened earlier this week between Alyssa Milano and Rose McGowan, that it just got me thinking about it so much, even though we are talking about something that ultimately it's just a couple of celebrities having a feud. But what they're feuding over and their ideas is what I find so fascinating about this situation. Plus all the weird, kind of coincidences that they were both on a show together and it was like this girl power show. And by the way, the third woman on the left, she was like the third character from Charmed. I looked her up just out of curiosity, and she's just trying to save the whales or something. So you know what? More power to you, whatever your name is. So moving on. So earlier
it's a pretty benign.
Yeah, she's trying to save the whales. That's fine. Whatever.
Go save those whales.
Yeah, you go save those whales. She actually legit put the last tweet that she put out, this woman on the left side here. The last tweet she put out was, "I'm only going to Twitter to check up on updates to the beer bug, and don't at me for anything else." So she's literally said, I don't want to know nothing about nothing, no drama, I don't want nothing to do with it, and she just backed out. And I'm like, respect. Okay, so but moving on. So earlier this week, I think it was at the beginning of the week, or maybe even late last week, Joe Biden found himself accused of sexual assault, and he was accused of sexual assault by one, oh gosh, what was that woman's name? It was it's not ultimately that important. I can't remember the Tara Reid. That's it, Tara Reid. I remember because she shares the same name as another actress named Tara Reid, and I thought it was the same woman, but it's not. So this woman named Tara Reid, who was on Joe Biden's campaign, part of the campaign team, claims that years ago Joe Biden pinned her, manhandled her, and stuck his fingers inside of her. Okay, and these came out, and we talked about this on the Tuesday show, because I think it was of last week actually. We talked about it on the show because one of the things that we wanted to make very clear was that unless this is a criminal proceeding where a woman is trying to get justice for a man who had done something like an actual act of sexual assault, and they bring forward evidence and they actually follow through in that regard, we have to be very careful with how we talk about this, because it doesn't matter ultimately if you agree or disagree with Joe Biden's politics. You guys have to know this. If you are men and you have an interest in men's issues, then that means that by extension you have to have an interest in things like due process. You have to basically look at all sexual assault claims very seriously and very critically, and make sure that you know that there are cases, and I'm sure that you guys know this, that there are cases where people can use criminal allegations, whether just allegations, to try and essentially destroy people that are in their way or that are maybe like blocking some kind of goal. And this is not something that happens along partisan lines. This is just something that happens. You might find it may happen more often on one side than the other, but ultimately that's not important because it happens. And those things, allegations of sexual assault, just like any other allegation, should not be used as a means to alter the results of elections, to alter the political democratic process that we have worked so hard to try and build some semblance of, right? So the thing that we were trying to make the point about is, you can find lots of stuff that Joe Biden stands on policy-wise that would make it to where you don't want to vote for him, right? Or stuff that you would want to vote for him. But a woman coming out of the woodwork, suddenly making sexual assault allegations, that is not how we should be making these decisions. Because essentially what we're doing is we're telling people that elections will now all be settled by whether or not a woman has made a sexual assault allegation. That is a terrible and dangerous precedent, right? So that was basically our position on this whole Joe Biden business. It ultimately doesn't matter whether he is, it ultimately doesn't matter. Let me see. I'm not saying it doesn't matter whether or not he's guilty. What doesn't matter is what his politics are. We should not be deciding whether or not someone should get elected based on whether or not someone decides to make a claim. A claim like that, right? Does that make sense? Am I being clear?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We shouldn't be pursuing these kinds of claims in terms of our political ends.
Yeah.
This is actually, Brian, could I get you to turn the echo off, because I don't think I need to hear.
Am I echoing? Yeah, hold on. I do have some audio that I want to play later, so I'll just mute right now.
Okay. So in essence, what I see happening, and this is becoming very much a pattern, is that people will advance this or take away due process based on what advances their political interests, or they'll advocate it based on what advances their political interests. So due process becomes subordinate to political tribalism. And I don't know if anybody else is noticing, but what we're starting to see is that in politics, they're using allegations of sexual assault as a weapon to block the democratic process, as a weapon to block initiatives they don't like, or people that they don't like from being elected to office. This is being used as a tool in politics. And this isn't new, but it's very dangerous because it threatens to strip away rule of law. It threatens to strip away the kind of cooperation, the high level of cooperation that is required to have a democratic system like our own, or a republic. It's something that is incredibly corrosive to the social fabric that maintains our political system. And it is something we should not be encouraging. These kinds of allegations belong in the criminal courts. If it's proven that this man is a convicted criminal, then it becomes critical to talk about that in the context of his candidacy, but not before then. Women should not have the power to derail politics and to start speaking for the citizens with their allegations. And what I mean is superseding the voice of the citizens with their allegations. Now, I'm pretty neutral when it comes to American politics. I'm pretty sure that Brian doesn't support Biden politically. I'm sure there's a lot of our listeners who don't support Biden politically. But nevertheless, they would understand what I'm talking about when I say that accusations of sexual impropriety or accusations of sexual assault or these kinds of slanderous accusations belong in a criminal court. And they don't belong in our political process. And the fact that they're starting to get in there is a very bad sign to the future of politics. Okay.
Yep, that's pretty much what I was gonna say. And again, you can look at the show that we did on it to see reasons why, like Hannah and myself, don't support Joe Biden because of his involvement with the Dear Colleague letter, with Title IX, with all of the protections that boys needed on college campuses. A lot of that stuff was stuff that Joe Biden put into place, his involvement with the Violence Against Women Act and everything else. So
Ironic.
it is ironic. It is ironic. But you see, that alone is plenty. I don't want my enemies who are men, if they happen to be men, I wouldn't want my I guess political opponents or people who I disagree with to get falsely accused or just accused of sexual impropriety or sexual assault just to watch them get their career destroyed, because I know the precedent that sets for every other man, and that's not how we want to live. That's not we've already been through that. We don't want that. We really don't want that.
And also, as I'm going to speak as a woman, I find the idea that women can use, aspects of their sexuality to manipulate the political process to be abhorrent. Like, I don't want a man's political prospects to be dependent on allegations that haven't been proven. So he violated my chastity, therefore he should no longer be acceptable as a candidate to the public. I mean, that's like, what kind of world does that create? I'll tell you what kind of world that creates. It creates the very world that feminists say they don't want, which is Gilead, a world in which women are entirely defined or primarily defined by their sexuality. If you're going to make women's greatest tool their sexuality, their greatest political tool, their sexuality, where do you think that ends up? Like, seriously, where do you think that goes? Where do you think it ends when you do things like this? And then you furthermore, like what we saw with the Weinstein case, you take away women's ability to consent legally. And you say things like, oh, those women, they were in his thrall. His mind penis magic just got into their brains and made them do things because he has a penis. And God knows, a penis is like a wand from Harry Potter. It just has magical mind control powers. When you do stuff like that, when you take away the legal recognition of women's consent and the expectation that they communicate that consent before we regard them as having been raped, and yes, any citizen has a responsibility to clearly communicate these consent, clearly communicate these kind of factors when you're dealing with something like sexual assault. We all have responsibility to each other. We have responsibility to the state. And what feminism is pushing is the lack of legal recognition of women's consent, which means the state starts to decide whether or not women consent. So what have we done? We've gone from a guardianship system in which men took responsibility for the women in their lives to one in which the state makes decisions for us. Oh, geez, what does that sound like, feminists? Seriously, in every step of the way, it seems like they have more of a problem with the decisions that other women make and the expectation that women live up to those decisions legally so that they remain socially and legally independent adults. Women remain that way. I mean, I do actually see a difference between being a guardian, being a ward of my husband versus the ward of the state. And I would rather be a ward of my husband than a ward of the state, because the state is not your friend. It can be, I guess, sometimes a reasonable tool for social control, but it's not your friend. I don't want to give the state that much power. I don't want to give the state the right to determine when I consent rather than me. And that's what feminists are doing. They're taking away women's right to consent. They're taking away their individual moral and legal autonomy. And I am actually not surprised when I heard one feminist say that they basically love the story of Gilead. It's like a feminist utopia because all women are oppressed equally. All women have the power of oppression at their fingertips. These women
Sounds like a wet dream.
fetishize. These women fetishize being victims because they think that's how they get power. Well, they know that's how they get power.
It is how they get power. Exactly.
And they want to arrange everything in such a way that women have no moral, legal, or social autonomy from what feminism expects from them and no recognition of their choices about their life. Okay.
Yeah.
That was a bit of a rant.
It's okay.
These people are,
I know. So, basically, this is the part that I found really interesting. So, when the Me Too thing was really kicking off, there was this interview that this is being shared by Ashley St. Clair. It was on Nightline with Rose McGowan. This is Rose McGowan now. This is Rose McGowan in the 90s over here. But this is Rose McGowan now. And I'm sorry if the video is kind of compressed. You're not really going to be able to see it very well because it's Twitter. But this is her being interviewed for Nightline about Alyssa Milano. And at first, I just thought, oh, they're just bitching at each other because there's always this kind of behind-the-scenes drama you don't know about. But in the larger context of everything that's happened, this is why I thought this was really interesting. So let me play this clip for you. And Allison, you should be able to hear the audio on this.
Your former Charmed co-star, Alyssa Milano, gets a lot of credit for helping Me Too go viral.
So?
Are you proud of her?
I don't like her.
Why?
I love the way that she's... Did you see that? Did you see the way she's... Wait, why are you gasping, like, legitimately, or are you just being sarcastic?
I'm just being the who frames stuff this way?
I don't
like
her.
her.
But I think there's something about that. I'm going to play the rest of the clips so you can see why this is important. Because one thing I will
artificial.
It does. No, I don't know. Because one thing I will give credit to Rose McGowan for, in everything I've seen, I think that she is genuinely honest to a fault, to the point where what she says, she really believes. It's conviction. It's not necessarily honesty, because she might believe something that's not true, but she really says what she means, I think.
I don't like her.
Why?
Because I think she's a lie.
Why?
I think she's a lie?
I think she's a lie, which I think she means I think she's a liar. It's like one of the ways that we would... It's kind of like a more street way of calling someone a liar, as you say, use a lie. But that basically means
any other woman watching this is just embarrassed for my sex. Like, seriously, this is okay. Ugh.
All right, well, let me play the rest of this.
Can you not separate ethics from your own personal feelings? Of course not.
Yeah.
Also, she looks sort of venomous. I know you say that she has conviction, but she looks really sort of like a venomous creature right now.
This woman is very angry, like all the time now. So I want to tell you what I think about all this after it's over. I'm not taking sides, because when you see like where they kind of stand on things, you can see that there's a lot of bullshit on both sides. But this is why I found it fascinating. But let me play the rest of this. Now, the question the interviewer asked is, why don't you like her? Okay. Like, what is there not to like about Alyssa Milano? She's made Me Too go viral and Time's Up and all of that, right?
Do you think I don't know these people? I'm not looking at this from the outside. I have a lot of experience. I know she's married to a CAA agent.
So the CAA is sort of like it's an agency for actors. It basically gets you hooked up with parts and roles and stuff, okay? So Alyssa Milano is married to or dating someone in the CAA, like someone that's kind of like powerful.
Do the math. Who's behind Time's Up? CAA. Where do they meet? CAA. Who needs good PR? CAA. Who are part of the pimp problem? CAA.
So when she says who are part of the pimp problem, CAA, the pimp problem is that the CAA are the people, according to Rose, and I tend to think that this is likely true, even though we haven't seen any rock solid evidence for this. The CAA are the people that essentially, if there was, and I know that in Hollywood there is sketchy shit going on with the casting couch and like actors and producers and agents and stuff, the CAA are basically like the pimps. They're the go-betweens, right? They're the people that hook up the young actor or actress with like agents and producers and such. And if there are any extra arrangements to be made, the CAA are supposedly involved with that. And that's the accusation that Rose is making. So basically what she's saying is if the CAA are the pimps and they're also the ones that need good PR and all, and they're involved with Time's Up, which is sort of like their way of being a part of this Me Too conversation, which in her mind means that they get to kind of control the conversation a bit from their end. And Alyssa Milano is dating someone or is married to someone that's in the CAA, then she's not really a real friend. She's not a real ally to the Me Too movement. That's basically what Rose is saying, okay? So I'm explaining what's going on, what Rose is getting at here, and let me play the rest of this. So
These are very powerful people you're talking about.
They are. So am I.
all right, well, that's the end of that. Now, they said that they tried to reach out to the CAA for a request to comment, and the CAA did not return any of the calls. So this is from a couple of years ago. This is Angry Rose McGowan talking about Alyssa Milano. Now, I put that in there for context because going back to the story, when Joe Biden was accused of sexual assault, Alyssa Milano, who's normally very vocal about Me Too, remember, she was out there like pushing for Kavanaugh not to get put in office. She was out there pushing for Trump not to get put into office because he said grab him by the pussy. She basically was out there when it came to political figures being accused that she did not like. But when the Joe Biden thing happened, and she had, here, I'll even go to her page here. She had endorsed Joe Biden before the accusations came out. And here in this tweet, she writes, I explain my silence, because she didn't say anything for a while, on the allegations against Joe Biden in this clip. I'm still endorsing at Joe Biden. Listen to this clip to find out why. And this is Alyssa Milano on a something called Ahoy or something. I don't know. It's basically like some interview. And she's talking to the interviewer and explaining her position. I want to play this part too. And then we can just talk about the sort of result of this, because that's the part that I find kind of interesting. So here's Alyssa Milano on this interview.
I logged on to Twitter, and typically my Twitter experience these days is I go on and I look at what's trending just to see, okay, it's basically a way of telling me what people are talking about. And you were trending.
Right. That's how I do it too.
Yeah. What did you do that you were trending?
So it's actually quite a serious reason,
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
So I endorsed Joe Biden.
All right, I'm sorry. I'm just pausing for the banana there. I forgot where the conversation actually becomes interesting, so I got to play through this.
Okay, good.
And there have been accusations against Joe about a sexual assault.
Right, and people were
And
saying, how can you do that? Because
so
you're...
I have not publicly said anything about this. If you remember, it kind of took me a long time to publicly say anything about Harvey as well,
Okay.
because I believe that even though we should believe women, and that is an important thing, and what that statement really means is
What was that?
No, I'm just reacting to that. I just because I believe we should believe women at this point in time, it's not politically expedient to do so.
Yeah,
So
right.
I'm being
She's like,
flip-flop.
well, yeah, exactly. But I want to play you know what I love about this is the interviewer, the way that he reacts to her explaining why she didn't speak up right away. It's kind of hilarious to me. But here, you'll see.
for so long, the go-to has been not to believe them. So
Yeah, sure. We for so long the go-to was not to
for
believe
God's
women.
sake. If you actually look at the statistics, all right, for so long it has been not to believe women. That is utter bullshit. If you look at the statistics of convictions, of rape convictions in like Victorian England, if a woman was of high status, well, of course, she had twice the rate of conviction as a woman who was a lower class. But here's the thing. In Victorian England, a so-called lower class woman, regardless of who she accused, had the same rate of conviction as a woman today. So there were more convictions for rape in the past, surprisingly, probably because now we actually expect things like evidence, or we did for a golden shining moment.
And we're better at getting it,
Yeah, we're better at getting it. So basically, when we're talking about rape accusations in the past, we're talking about a woman's word against a man, because they didn't have the ability to get evidence like we do now. They didn't have iPhones. They didn't have cameras. They didn't have recording devices. They didn't have texting. They didn't have email. They didn't have any of that. So it was just basically a woman's word against a man. Maybe there might be some torn petticoats or something. And even in that situation, not even, amazingly, they had the same conviction rate as they do now for women who were, the scullery maid. But if you were a woman who was a lady or upper class or rich, you had double the conviction rate that they do now, because your word was considered to be bondable. So if you were an upper class lady and you accused a man of something, he was boned. He was going to jail, almost guaranteed. So no, there's never been there's not in living memory, not even in the living memory of the parents of the living memory, has there been a society in the West that did not take rape seriously and afford women protection of law. So shove it.
Okay. So let's hear the rest of Alyssa's statement, but yes, you're right about that.
Really, we have to sort of societally change that mindset to believing women, but that does not mean at the expense of not, giving men their due process.
I'm sorry, Brian. I'm so tired of listening to feminists say shit like this. We gotta change society to abide by the mores that everybody already agrees with. And that's why I get people to do shit by saying they're not doing it. Like, seriously, this already exists. The reason why anybody pays attention to you is because they care in the first place.
Yeah.
If they didn't, you would have no platform. You would have my platform. You would have Brian's platform. If society cared about your issues as a woman and the issue of women being raped or allegedly being raped as much as it cared about men's issues, you would have exactly the same amount of platform that we would. Which means, let's see, how many people are listening to this? Maybe 140?
156.
156.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for being here, but I'm proving a point.
Yeah, I know.
You get millions, plus you get money thrown at you like you're in a hurricane of money. And power thrown at you. Please, Alyssa, save us from ourselves, because we truly don't care about women being raped. That's why we're throwing so much money and attention to you, because you're going to save us from not caring about this thing that we obviously don't care at as we write fat checks to you.
Yeah.
Like, why are people so... And you realize that feminism is a grift that people just want. They just want the lie. They just want it. They just want to convince themselves that they live in a society that is so antithetical to their own morals so they can feel absolutely superior to everyone else. Well, guess what? There is no such society. There is no society in which people are cheering on rape. Well, in war-torn countries, yes. And in places where the social fabric is completely broken down, yes. Not in our society, well, not yet. There's no, this just doesn't happen. And man, like, it just galls me that feminists can use what they say doesn't exist to gain so much power and attention. And it doesn't gall me because they're getting so much power and attention. It galls me because it's such a fucking blatant lie. And yet it works.
Yep. It is a comfortable lie for people. It is a comfortable lie. All right, so I know that was really annoying, but I'm getting to the part that I found humorous.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Brian.
It was
and
humorous.
Also my cat has
it's okay.
to
Your
try
cat
to
can be a
make
part
me
of
feel
this
better.
too. Yeah, that's good. Pet it. Pet that cat.
Giving men their due process and investigating
that.
situations.
I like that.
This guy is so, I like that. She's like, we want to believe women, but we also want to give men due process. And he acts like she just blew
Suddenly.
his fucking mind. He's like, I like that. I want to hear it again because it is funny to me.
Them. So really we have to sort of societally change that mindset to believing women, but that does not mean at the expense of not, giving men their due process and investigating situations.
I like that.
I like that. It is, though, obviously. Not only that, but why? Well, you can even tell by the way in which Milano frames this whole discussion on the Me Too movement and due process. She frames it as something where women are the victims and men are the perpetrators. And I think this is the reason why Rose McGowan takes issue, and this is what I wanted to get at. So ultimately what we're looking at is Alyssa Milano suddenly cares about due process because the person that's being accused is someone that she supports politically. So now she cares about due process. When it was happening to Brett Kavanaugh, when it was happening to Donald Trump, when it was happening to any number of figures, either in entertainment or in politics that she didn't like, then she was basically just like, take them to the gallows. I don't give a shit. Their life is over as far as I'm concerned. I'm sure they're guilty. Get rid of them, right? Make sure their life is ruined. But when it happens to Joe Biden, someone that she supports, then basically what you have is a situation that is not dissimilar to what was going on in the 90s with Bill Clinton when he was accused of, all of this sexual impropriety and stuff. And there were people trying to use this as a means to say, look, you feminists are hypocrites because this is a politician that you support, but you're not going to throw him under the bus like you would any other because he agrees with your politics. And I get that, but that's not why I brought this up. That's what most people that talked about this situation did. This article from Reason Magazine, for example, written by Robbie Suave, was trying to basically say, look, Alyssa Milano's a hypocrite because she backed away and she's basically changing her stance. But the thing is, in a way, Alyssa Milano is right when she says men deserve due process. That's the extent of which I'm going to say she is correct. I wouldn't expect her to be consistent on that belief. But if I'm going to take that little nugget out of what's being said and say, do I agree with this statement? Well, obviously I do. The problem is that Me Too as a movement has absolutely no interest in due process whatsoever. It can't, because we already had due process. We already had that system in place to make sure that victims of assault, whether sexual or not, could make an accusation and police would investigate if they report it as a crime, and we have a system in place. It's not perfect. No one thinks it is, but it's the best we got, and we got to make use of it. And if we want to live in a free society, we have to abide by that. Otherwise, you're going to end up in a situation where men can go to prison for whatever, and to an extent, they still do today, because again, our system is very flawed. But if I was going to just take that nugget and say, well, yes, Alyssa Milano, you're right. Men deserve due process. And I can take that outside the context of the hashtag #MeToo movement. Now, the reason why I thought this was really striking is Rose McGowan's response to Alyssa Milano regarding this video. Rose McGowan says, you are a fraud. This is about holding the media accountable. You go after Trump and Kavanaugh saying, believe victims. You are a lie. You have always been a lie. The corrupt DNC is in on the smear job of Tara Reid. That's the woman who accused Joe Biden. So are you. Shame. Rose McGowan's position seems to be blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne. That's Rose McGowan's position. Scorched fucking earth. Men everywhere are doing this shit. I don't care where they are politically. We need to throw them all in jail. That's her position, right? And Alyssa Milano's is, well, I'm going to use this tool to destroy men who oppose me politically. I think that's how it should be used. But when it comes to men that I like or that I agree with, well, maybe we should give them due process. But really, though, which one of those is better than the other? I would argue that they're both awful. And I don't take as much solace that Reason Magazine or a lot of other sort of more right-wing conservative or just anti, I guess, critical of Me Too or anti-feminist sources have, the way that they have discussed this, the only angle they bring, because if I scroll down Rose McGowan's feed here when she says this, the first tweet response is Blair White saying, "You're doing amazing, sweetie," which is basically in support of what Rose McGowan is saying. Now, I agree that calling out Alyssa Milano's hypocrisy has some value. But do you realize what Rose McGowan wants? She wants to burn it all down. And this, she doesn't care if innocent men are destroyed in the process. She basically operates under the assumption that men everywhere are guilty and that they have been conditioned that way by the cult that is the United States culture. See, this is what she believes. So that's the thing that I'm... Okay, go ahead.
Isn't there an allegation against Rose McGowan?
No, not that I know of. Is there? I know that there's Asia Argento.
Maybe I'm...
Or Asia Argento might be who you're thinking of.
I'm thinking of somebody else. Okay,
Yeah.
never mind. Just don't worry. I just had a brain fart. Ignore me. This is actually a really bad slippery slope to start getting allegations of female chastity or male sexual violation of women into politics and starting to use them as a political tool, because it doesn't really end with this. It just starts to entrench the tribalism to the point where politics becomes gridlocked with it and nothing can be done. And then we start paving way for the strong man to just make decisions for everybody instead. So it's like, this doesn't belong in politics. And again, I find this incredibly insulting that this is now being used as a political tool. Like, seriously, if you take it to the criminal court where it belongs, because if this is a guy who's getting away with serial offending, then he needs to go to jail to protect other potential victims. And just the fact that women are turning to their sexuality as a political tool is just abhorrent to me.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. All right. So I guess ultimately, because I did see a statement, French Honey Badger sent a super chat. I want to respond to it really quick because I didn't give all of the context because there's a lot to the stuff that Rose McGowan especially has said over the years. You can find lots of crazy rants that she's done in various places, and I'm not trying to dismiss her by saying that she's crazy, although I do think she has some problems. French Honey Badger gives us $5 and says, "Where does McGowan want to burn it all down? She says to hold the media accountable. Don't we want that?" Well, she says that in this tweet. And I mean, I agree the media should be held accountable. That's why I say there is, in both of their positions, there is a sliver of truth. But the problem is that it is wrapped in so much anger and rage and hate, or in the case of Rose McGowan, it's basically wrapped up in rage and to a degree hatred. But in Alyssa Milano's case, it's more like it's like about advantage and position and power. So it's basically we're looking at Korn and Gollum, you know, and people are saying, "Oh yeah, I think Korn is doing better here," and it's like I don't like either of them, because if you look at Rose McGowan's previous statements, she basically says women, like the whole idea that you should investigate a woman's accusations is ridiculous. That women should be believed hands down, and it shouldn't matter where the politics of the man being accused is. Women should be believed. So the difference is Rose is saying All women should be believed no matter what. I don't care where that leads. I don't care what it results in. Burn it all down, basically, right? Because if you go down that road of just believe women because they say so, and anyone who thinks that women have any degree of agency, or they can alter the outcome, or they have any control over whether or not something happens to them. Like, all of this has been asked of her. She basically says they're all idiots, they're all fools, they don't know what they're talking about, and that this has to be top down, but like mob rule, believed by everybody, blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne, all the way. That's Rose McGowan's position. Absolutely. You can find other interviews that she's done in the past. That's what she believes. Alyssa Milano believes it's different. It's basically like, I want to do these things. I agree with all that stuff, but I want to use this to gain a political advantage. I want to basically get the people I want in power to be in power. I want to use this as a tool to keep people out of power when they're not in power. The question is, the funny thing about this is that both of these are terrible. That's the thing that's funny about it. Both of these are terrible, and neither side should be getting credit. That's essentially the full context. So look at old, and Rose McGowan's position hasn't changed. So if you want to know what she believes, look at old interviews with her, because she was a lot more part of the media spotlight. I watched some videos, and I mean, the woman is, she had a bad experience in Hollywood, I think. But she thinks that extends to the entire world and men in general. And so she has just like bottomless, seething hatred against men. And Alyssa is more like, she probably hasn't had those experiences, but she's more like, well, I could use this to my advantage. So this is basically what we're looking at. So Allison, I don't know if you wanted to comment on that, but that's the thing about it that I found really fascinating about this whole thing, because it is a very public discussion around Me Too, and there are people who are taking different things from it, but they don't see the angle that I'm seeing, because I've looked at, this kind of historically, and Rose McGowan's scorched earth approach it's not better. It's not better, guys. So, all right, Allison, go ahead.
I would like you to read the next super chat, because I knew that Rose McGowan had some relation to
That's right.
An allegation of a woman. Yeah.
That's right. Yes, you're right. Albert Nader Retro gave us $5 Canadian, says, when the accusations came out against Asia Argento, suddenly Rose supported due process, even though she's the one who outed the Jimmy Bennett story. Yeah, she did. I remember that because we did talk about it. So again, but Rose's thing, see, Alyssa's thing is about politics. Rose's thing seems to be about women and men, because the way that she frames the discussion around Me Too, it's gendered for her. There are no male victims. There are no female perpetrators. This is the reason why Corey Feldman, when he tried to use Me Too to like bring attention to pedophilia in Hollywood, which he's been doing for decades, Me Too pushed him out immediately. Pushed him out. They basically like said, nope, we don't want to talk about that. We're using this for women. And so children are at a lower priority than women are in the eyes of the Me Too movement. And I think that perfectly lines up, because I do remember Rose defending Asia Argento. I do remember that in passing. I don't think that she got all hardcore, but in passing. But I think it's because for her, this is a men versus women thing. This is a men versus women thing. So,
that's what I was thinking, that she was doing some kind of defense. So in other words, she does have a double standard, just like Alyssa, the person we're talking about today.
Alyssa Milano, yeah.
It's just that her alternative political tribe is men as a group.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, she believes that that's the only way this should be looked at. And basically what you have is two women who know the power and the utility of female victimhood in the form of the Me Too movement, and that they hold tremendous power. And the reason why they're at each other's throats, well, kind of, Rose is definitely going after Alyssa. Alyssa Milano keeps saying, look, I don't have anything against her, and I'm sure that she's mad, but I want to do this over here, But they're basically both deciding what the future or the fate of men should be based on how they decide to leverage the power in the
I just got it.
What?
I got the pun in the
pun?
title because it was Charmed, War of the Witches. Oh.
Yes, there were witches on Charmed. That's where the title. Yes, thank you, Allison. Thanks for letting that sink in. Yes, it was the War of the Witches. So those are basically my thoughts on that. I thought it was interesting. I think that a lot of the other people who are commenting on this are getting it twisted. Like, again, I understand the joy that you feel when you point out the hypocrisy of someone like Alyssa Milano because they're trying to use Me Too for political advantage. But the thing is, that's not new. They've been doing that for a long time. And while I agree with that, I agree that that's hypocritical and it's clearly a power grab, and they're just trying to use it to to make sure that their person is going to get elected into office or whatever. I ultimately think that is not really that much worse than a woman who just wants skulls for the skull throne. Just like, I don't give a shit. All men are guilty. It's just a matter of when they get accused, right? And we shouldn't have due process for them. We shouldn't question women. We shouldn't challenge their assertions. We shouldn't try to investigate, because if you do, then that's basically the same as denying a woman her lived experience. And that's what Rose was complaining about when she called Alyssa Milano a fraud. She said the DNC is trying to smear Tara Reid, right? Tara Reid is the woman who accused Joe Biden. Well, how can you smear Tara Reid? You either investigate or you don't. That's it, right? And it's clearly like, why didn't Tara Reid say anything a year ago? Joe Biden wasn't running a year ago, was he? So it seems a little weird to me. But I don't want to say that it's not true. I don't know. But I think that it's clear that there's sketchy shit happening, and I guess it's just, this is what happens when you basically create a society with where women like this get to decide what happens to men based on their mob of female victimhood, sexual assault activist types. And so they're just leveraging Me Too in their own way. So it's not like one is better than the other, even if Alyssa Milano's a hypocrite. Like, I frankly, I hate the whole thing.
What's the likelihood that Blair White is being sarcastic?
No, I actually think that Blair White is supportive because I think that because on the surface, this is the thing, what Rose McGowan is saying in this tweet is not wrong. It's not wrong. So I agree with the tweet, right? But I know what Rose McGowan really thinks about the Me Too movement, because she said it in multiple interviews. What she thinks about what it like being a victim of sexual assault, and how the whole way in which the whole conversation around sexual assault, the way that Rose McGowan frames it, is feminist from start to finish. So, if a woman says that she's experienced one and a man asks her, well, did you try to get away? Did you say anything? Did you go to the police? Like, these kinds of common sense questions, they make her rage, because she thinks that any of those things are just tools to keep women from coming forward. She believes in the whole narrative, right? She is a diehard feminist too. So I know that that's what's behind all of this. And basically what you're looking at is two different kinds of ideologues, basically. And one of them uses feminism as a tool to gain political favor, which is Alyssa Milano. And the other one uses feminism as a tool to destroy men and gain a different kind of political favor, which is Rose McGowan. It's basically it's just a difference of who you paint your enemies as, right? I don't think that they're morally different, but in this particular instance, I think that Blair White, I can only assume she agreed with it on the surface, and either doesn't know what Rose McGowan really wants, or she just agrees on the surface and thought she'd make a comment there. So like maybe she was so angry at the hypocrisy of Alyssa Milano that she felt like she had to say that. But I think this definitely goes deeper, and that's why I wanted to. I was personally fascinated by this conversation, especially when you have responses like, Reason Magazine, where they're like, "Oh, her, hypocrite, we got her, folks," and like Mark Dice did that, and like, let me see if I can find it here. Like, if you scroll down in this interview, there are people, basically pointing out all of the hypocrisy of Alyssa Milano. Yeah, so CEAA, by the way, somebody was asking me, what is the CAA? It stands for, someone said it in here somewhere, but it's just like it's just like a agency, like an agency or something like that. They basically, keep people they basically hook the actors up with the producers. So but the point is, a lot of people think that Rose is a hero because of what she did. And I get that, because again, yeah, Alyssa Milano should have been called out for that, but don't forget what Rose wants, because she didn't say it there, but it's way more savage. So I'm not saying one is better than the other. I think both are terrible. I think that the problem is that this conversation between these two people, this is what most people are seeing in terms of discussion around Me Too itself. It's basically two murderous people trying to decide how men should be killed and for what reason. But there are no men, or at least people who would advocate for men, that could be part of that conversation where they're like, well, how about we get rid of all of that and we just do due process and try to do this in a more, a little bit less bloodthirsty of a way. So those are my thoughts on that.
Yep, I would concur.
Yeah. So that's basically all I wanted to say about this. I hope that this wasn't too cringe for you guys. I was curious. I found this to be really interesting. Yeah, because I don't know if they might not care, because we're talking about a couple of, basically has-been actors that are basically discussing Me Too, and they're having a fight with each other. But it
brings up a lot of political issues.
Yeah. And the Joe Biden thing is very relevant, right? The Joe Biden thing is very relevant.
We don't need feminine, women's dominance hierarchies in our politics. Because the problem with that is the way that women dominate each other is to dehumanize their tribes, like the tribe that they belong to. And that is very dangerous to bring into politics. We're already seeing that with the Republicans versus the Democrats. Republican women are a little bit, I think, more reserved in doing that kind of demonization, but the Democratic women are going full bore for the demonization of Republican men.
Yeah,
and that's Republican women can really expect.
Republican women do participate because they do see that it does have some, it carries cachet, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's useful. So sometimes they will. Because that's the thing about the Joe Biden thing. There are people on the right that, mostly women, but some men too, that are like, oh, he's been accused of things. And they basically try to make the same kind of accusations. That's where the creepy Joe thing comes from. And the fact is, yeah, the photos are unflattering, but I don't want us deciding whether or not somebody gets elected based on that. That is the worst part of this political discourse, is that people are deciding based on like bullshit optics. And I do know that is like a very popular way. Unfortunately, we do make these decisions, but I'd like us to move away from that. I think that's really like bad news bears. So, but yeah, it is, that's basically, you hit it on the head. That's the reason why I found this story interesting. It was also, again, it was timely. The Joe Biden thing is being talked about right now. And now that like Bernie's out of the race, I think it's basically down to Joe. Maybe Tulsi Gabbard is still, I don't know if she's still in the race. I hope she is, because her I like, but although I would like to see like how feminist she gets if she does become like the nominee, because the woman card does become a little bit more appealing the closer you get to the rungs of power. But now that that's over with, I definitely like, if we're gonna do any electing on anything, it should not have anything to do with some sexual like assault allegations. Should be white noise, right? And that's what I'd like, but I don't think we're there yet because
No.
culturally
It's too
we're
tempting.
just
It's too tempting
yeah.
a tool.
Yeah,
It's too tempting a political tool.
Yeah, and it carries a lot of it does carry a lot of weight with
And
voters.
it's gross, to be quite frank. It's gross to see women's sexuality being turned into a political bludgeoning tool. It turned into a political weapon. That is repulsive to me. I think it's not only is it something that dehumanizes men and removes their due process, it's also something that I think dehumanizes women, to be quite frank. These allegations belong in a criminal context. That's where they should be pursued. They shouldn't be used as political tools. And women who do that degrade sexuality and the political process. So that's what I believe. I just want to, before we go to the super chats, I just wanted to remind everybody that we are doing the fundraiser, the monthly fundraiser for Brian and Hannah and now Brian. Go to Patreon, or not Patreon. I apologize. Strike that from your memories. Go to feedthebadger.com/project/badger-media-blitz. The link is in the low bar as well. I can't seem to get YouTube to do the cards during the stream anymore. For some reason, they've decided to disable that because,
Wait, you used to be able to do it like while we were live? You could just add a card?
so they could just click the, you see where the feed the badger and then the arrow, they could just click the eye that used to be there. Now it's no longer there.
So now
because
our arrow is pointless.
It's impotent. It's pointing to nothing.
Ignore the arrow, guys. Just go to the low bar.
Ignore it. But go to the low bar or go to feedthebadger/projects, feedthebadger.com/projects/badger-media-blitz. It's their one-time donations. Make sure that we are able to pay our bills monthly, and make sure we're able to keep Hannah and Brian producing the content that you guys enjoy. And so go there and help out. Every little bit counts. So don't think that any smaller donation is unappreciated, because they all are. And I'll turn it back to Brian. Oh, wait, one last thing. We're also opening up the public square in our patron Discord to the public. It's one section in the patron Discord is now open to the public. If you're interested in going there, you can also find the link in the low bar. I apologize to anybody who's listening to this during the podcast after the YouTube stream. I cannot, I don't know how to make that Discord link accessible to you. Well, I do, but I haven't done it yet.
Oh, okay. Well, I did put the links to both in the description, so.
Yeah, but if they're listening to this afterwards during the podcast.
Oh yeah, how to join from there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you could spell it out. It's https://.
Okay, stop.
Okay,
stop.
I won't. All right, I won't do that.
No, don't do this thing.
Just go to YouTube.
All right, let's
it's
do
there.
The super chats.
Okay, I'll do the super chats. So, Albert Nader Retro gives us $5 Canadian and says, "Objectification is a thing all humans are guilty of. From Demi Moore in Striptease to Channing Tatum in Magic Mike, we all do it to some degree. I don't think we objectify. I think we subjectify, right? That's the feminists invented the term, or they use the term objectify to say that when a man looks at a woman and finds her sexually appealing, that he is turning her into something less than human. That's why they call it objectify. And that is supposed to be demeaning to women because it treats them like an object. The fact is, when men take an interest in women, just like when women take an interest in men, they don't think of them as objects. They think of them as people. They turn them into subjects. Even when you watch pornography, you are subjectifying the women in it. It's just that feminists want to put it in the least charitable way possible, because the way that feminism is framed so that anything that men do involving women is always the worst thing it could be for women. So that means they have to treat them like objects, like disposable pieces of trash.
I got into the most bizarre argument with a feminist on Twitter. They were alleging that a man having sex with a sex worker is not objectifying but a man watching pornography is.
Right.
Yeah, even if the woman consents to having the pornography taken and distributed, she can't, I guess, consent to every individual man who watches it or something. Man, this stuff is like, at what point do normal people just look at this and are like, this is basically somebody with a mental illness screaming at individual air molecules on a street corner.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is it's as coherent as that. Okay.
All right.
Next super chat.
Leia Bryant gives us $2 and says, "I'm a witch, Wicca. Leave us out of this stuff. The title is a joke. I am referencing the TV show Charmed that the 3 women were on, where they played 3 witches, I guess, and they fought demons, and it was a TV show called Charmed. It was this corny show on like the WB or whatever. So that's why I called them the War of the Witches. I wasn't actually calling them witches. I don't actually have strong opinions on witches. So there you go. Egregious Charles gives us $10 and says, while the accusation shouldn't make Biden unelectable by itself, it, in combination with his efforts to make an accusation damning, it should. It highlights this bad policy, or his bad policy. Yeah, I think that there is some political use in watching that irony kind of unfold for people who are paying attention to that. I see what you're saying, so I take that. But I wouldn't want, like you said, I wouldn't want politicians to rise or fall based on whether or not women have either accused him or just given him praise. I mean, we could get to a point where a woman could just say, I like him, and because they have like a bunch of followers on fucking Twitter, they get elected, like that's not why we should be doing that. So remove female influence is what I'm saying. Remove it. All right, Mr. Roboto gives us $2 and says, is it time for a Biden-Hillary presidential run? No idea. But you know what? We'll see. We'll see. Q Brother Soulstar gives us $2 and says, never forget Rose defending Asia Argento. Thank you for the $2, Q Brother Soulstar. The Great Indoors 1979 gives us €2 and says, is the CAA similar to the Film Actors Guild? Yeah, something like that, except it's for agents. It's like an agency for actors, I believe. Tyler Preston gives us $5 and says, whenever hearing the Emmett Till case as for why due process exists, they would say, quote, Emmett was lynched because he was black, not because he's male. Yes, that's why the conversation around I try to stay away from, and I reject the racial conversation because it does allow lynchings to take place. As long as it's not racist, it's okay, right? And that's not really cool. So French Honey Badger gives us $5 and says, where does McGowan want to burn it all down? She says to hold the media accountable. Don't we want that? I already read that. Yeah, I already addressed that one. Albert Nada, I already read that one. French Honey Badger gives us $10 and says, fair enough. Thank you for the context. You're welcome. Albatross Flight gives us $2 and says, McGowan or Milano, no matter who wins, we lose. Exactly right. Meredith Glassberg gives us $5, says, this is just a bunch of women competing on their dominance hierarchy, and their battlefield is about how they weaponize their sexuality. Yeah, when she says, I don't like her, I got this like kind of weird, like, she came in wearing the same dress as me. Like, that's the kind of, like, you know what I mean?
No shit.
Yeah. I got that sense, like, I don't like her, and they were working together for like 8 years or something. So, okay. So Albert Nader Retro gives us $5 Canadian. It says CAA stands for Creative Artists Agency, and you missed my first super chat.
No longer is that true, Albert Nader Retro.
Yeah, I think I've read it at this point. Twilight Mists gives us $2 and says the title also fits the witch hunts of Emmy 2. Yeah, that's right. I thought it was that. It's just so like, it's I don't know. It's just so fortunate. Everything just fell into place with this one. We're talking about literal witches that are managing witch hunts, like women who've played witches managing witch hunts. There's just so much there. It's so perfect. All right. Well, anyway, that's all the super chats. So do you want to just go into the after show? We went a little
Oh, sure. Yes, let's do that. So once
Okay.
again, please support the show by going to feedthebadger.com/projects/media, badger-media-blitz. I think you can also just access it through Feed the Badger as well, or the link in the low bar. And I'll leave it at that. Let's take it out, Brian.
All right. Well, if you
And
guys,
if you want to join us, yes.
oh yeah, do that. If you want to join us, you have to go to feedthebadger.com, start a monthly subscription. $5 gets you into the Discord. You can get into the public square now for nothing. But if you really want to like have more access, $5 a month gets you to Discord. It also lets you watch some of the bonus content. For almost every live show we do, we have an after show. So you're looking at almost double the amount of content that you could be enjoying if you went and fed the Badger. And other levels will get you more access. So the more you give, the more access you get. And there is plenty. And the community itself is very great. We have game nights. We got people streaming. Allison plays video games with the patrons all the time. And, you know, we got all kinds of stuff going on. So please consider becoming a Badger by going to feedthebadger.com and starting a monthly subscription. Now, we're going to wrap up the show and go into the after show where I think we're going to be looking at this interview that took place between Whoopi Goldberg and Bernie Sanders on The View when The View was working from home. So if you guys want to be a part of that, and we'll probably just talk about other stuff too. We may talk more about Rose McGowan and her, you know, scorched earth approach. But yeah, if you guys want to be a part of that, that's Feed the Badger. We're gonna head in there now. So for now, I'm gonna wrap the show up. I want to thank you guys for coming on this episode of HBR Debate. I want to thank Allison for joining me. If you guys could please smash like Chan, I'd appreciate that. Also, be sure to subscribe if you're not already subscribed. I see that Badger live streams has been picking up subs ever since, well, steadily for a while. But when I had Sydney Watson on, we saw a bit of a spike. And we're close to 8,000. So I want to see us hit 8,000 on our live streaming channel. I think we could totally do that. I know lots of channels that do live streams that do very well. So why not us? So subscribe.
Because we're men's rights activists.
Yeah. But we could
we're
be
machines.
We are machines, that's for sure. So smash like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, and leave us a comment. Let me know what you think about this topic. Do you have any thoughts on this? Maybe there's more info that you don't know. I would like to hear your thoughts on this this witch fight that happened on Twitter and the history behind it. Yeah, let us know in the comments. So with that said, I'm going to wrap the show up there. Thanks for coming on, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.